everyone. Welcome to CEA 101, a study abroad overview for families. We are so excited to have you all here with us today. Housekeeping items before we get started. Submit your questions by typing your inquiry into the chat box. We will be using the chat function to answer as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. Please also mute your microphone to reduce echo and allow for the best audio experience for everyone. Lastly, you'll be sending out the recording of the session and the submitted questions to everyone for reference. We have several people on the call today to present. My name is Julia Corey, specialist here at CEA. We also have our Director of Health, Safety, and Affairs, Elizabeth Cather.
Hello, everyone.
Site Specialist, Christine Weiler. Hi, everybody. And Associate Academic Coordinator, Alex Henderson.
Hi, everyone.
A couple of topics we will be reviewing today: introduction to CEA resources, an academic overview, planning for departure, entry requirements, cell phone, quick packing, and life on location. Who is CEA? CEA stands for Cultural Experiences Abroad, but we go by CEA Study Abroad. CEA partners with both U.S. and international universities to develop our study abroad programs and academics, with the goal of helping as many students as we can have the study abroad experience. We have 21 locations around the world. CEA staff supports students to achieve success while studying abroad. I would now like to introduce Alex Henderson to review our academic structures.
Hi, everyone. Alex Henderson here from the Academic Department. I serve as Associate Academic Coordinator here at CEA. I just wanted to very briefly go over our academic structure that we offer in our programs and talk a little bit about why it is very important that both you and your student understand these different structures. So at one end of our structure, we have the CEA Study Center. That's where students will only take courses at the CEA Study Center. We very similar style of courses that they would be taking at their home university in the U.S. with other CEA students. We also have partner university programs, that is where students are taking courses directly at the partner university with foreign students as well as other study abroad students. Then we have the hybrid program. That's a combination of both CEA Study Center courses and partner university courses. Gives them a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. We also have the internship program, where students will not only be working in their internships in their host location, but also taking courses at either a partner university or at our CEA Study Center. So if you don't know which program your student is, you may want to connect with them to find out about their program, because depending on what type of program you're in, that will affect the different expectations that are going to be put upon your students. Talking about academic expectation, the first thing I want to talk about is the attendance policy. CEA Study Abroad has high academic standards that are enforced throughout your student program. Regardless of whether your student is attending a study center program or a partner institution program, there will be an attendance policy that your student will be accountable to throughout their program. As an example, excessive absences will affect your student's grade. Please note that this attendance policy may differ from your student's home institution and attendance policies, particularly if they're attending a larger institution. These policies are reviewed at length during your student's orientation, and there is academic staff available for support during your student semester. One thing that I would like to mention is that traveling will count as an absence for your student. So if you're planning on visiting them during their program, please review the calendar and make sure that your plans coincide with your students' courses. Traveling is not an absence, even when there are conditions outside of your control. Moving now to talk about the culture of the classroom. Just as the culture of their new city will differ from the culture of their home or college town, the culture of the international classroom will be different than that of a typical American classroom as well. While the culture may be more strict than what the students are used to, they will need to abide by these new rules. Phones are absolutely not allowed in the classroom. The student will need to surrender their phone upon the request of the professor. Most professors allow computers in the classroom, but that can be confirmed in the student's first class. Water is allowed, but students should not bring in food or other drinks. Finally, punctuality is key in a CEA classroom where students are expected to arrive on time and stay for the entire duration of the class. And while there is no formal dress code, wearing pajama pants, yoga pants, or other athleisure or casual clothes are not necessarily deemed appropriate in the CEA classroom as they are in many classrooms here in the U.S. And part of this international experience is not only learning the topics of the course, but also some professional interactions. Professors internationally are generally granted much more respect than those here in the United States. Students should always address their professors and CEA staff, both in verbal and written communication, with professionalism, courtesy, and kindness. Lastly, if your student receives any special accommodations at their home school, such as a quiet testing environment, a note taker, or perhaps extra time, please have your student contact their site specialist if they have not done already, so that we can begin the process to ensure those accommodations can be granted while your student is abroad. And so that's it for me here on the academic side. Now I'm going to hand it over to Christine for a pre-departure overview.
Hi everyone, this is Christine, a site specialist here at CEA Study Abroad. And in our pre-departure overview, I just wanted to go over that your students started their experience by working with a CEA admissions counselor to determine the program that would best fit their academic and personal goals. They were also directed to speak with their academic advisors, study abroad advisors, and you to be fully prepared to apply to the program that's right for them. Once accepted into the program, your student started working with their site specialist. Site specialists are your student's main point of contact from the time they are accepted into the program until they get on the plane to leave for their study abroad experience. Your student site specialist reaches out to your students through several different mediums, including text messaging, phone calls, emails, and Facebook. They reach out to your students regularly to ensure they are receiving logistical and cultural preparation for their program abroad. Each site specialist is an expert in the program they advise on, and in most cases have been to the locations they advise about, and are you and your student's best resource during this time. Your student also has a personal student accounts advisor who is a great resource for arranging tuition payments. From a customized payment plan to working with your school's financial aid office, this team is available to support you and your student in creating the best payment strategy. I would like to highlight another amazing resource other than their site specialist. This is their My CEA account, which you can see on the screen. The student portal contains an overview of the preparation your student needs to complete before they leave for their program. It also has a lot of information to help prepare them culturally for their program, particularly in the Resources tab. They can also see their invoice and make payments in the Payment tab. If you would like to review the My CEA account, please ask your student for their login information. Our goal is to help prepare you and your students for an excellent study abroad experience. If you have any questions about your student's program, please don't hesitate to reach out to anyone on our team. We're happy to help. Now, Liz Cather, our Director of Student Affairs, is going to talk to you about some pre-departure conversations.
Thank you, Christine, and hello, everyone. As CEA Director of Affairs, I'm your resource for questions about your student's study abroad experience outside of the classroom. So students may choose their study abroad location for many reasons. Perhaps they have studied there before, perhaps a sibling or a parent has visited there, they visited on a school trip, their friends highly recommended this particular city as a destination, or they are the first to study abroad in their family and very excited to travel internationally. As you and your student have reflected on their study abroad opportunities, it's valuable to have conversations with them about what they expect from this experience and what you expect from them. What are their goals for studying abroad? Is it to complement their existing major or minor, to perfect existing language skills, or maybe acquire conversational skills in a new language? Is the focus on absorbing the local culture, maybe learning about their heritage and where family members may have come from? Or is it to travel as much as possible and to experience multiple cultures? It's important that you discuss your expectations of them. to earn those credits with passing grades for their degree, to grow in their independence, to become more resilient, to experience the new culture fully, develop a more global perspective, develop workplace skills, or gain international work experience. This kind of discussion will help you understand your students' priorities and also share your hopes for them. If you haven't had discussions along these lines, I would encourage you to do so.
So I also wanted to talk a little bit about preparing a budget and the resources that you have on your CEA account. Preparing a budget for studying abroad will involve more than a full college budget of books, organization dues, and going out with friends. It is important to talk about the amount of travel outside of your student's host city your student wants to do, as well as shopping and dining budget. Every year, CEA provides a sample budget based on student spending habits over the last 3 years in that location. This shows both the low end and the high end for additional costs, like personal travel, food, entertainment, course fees, etc. This can be found both on our CEA website and your student's MyCEA account.
Thanks, Christine. Now that we know you're going to have some really interesting discussions with your student about expectations and budgeting, we want to talk a little bit more about challenges in preparing for your student study abroad experience for yourself. Working through the difficulties that your student may experience will help them become a stronger and more resilient person, and one who is better able to navigate challenges and setbacks that they might experience later in life. However, your feelings of concern and your desire to assist them is going to be magnified by the distance and all unknowns that you will experience being a family member of a student abroad. The same things that are exciting for your student are going to be very uncomfortable for you. However, remember from the first day when they started school, you've helped prepare them and helped them learn things to succeed in new environments. As they have succeeded in college, they will also succeed in studying abroad. So I encourage you to join our family communities via Facebook or the blog to be in touch with others who are experiencing the same things and have the same concerns for their students.
I also want to highlight the family guide that you see on the screen. This can be found on the family blog and by searching the CEA website, and is an excellent overview for any family member of a CEA study abroad student. Also, as a reminder, your CEA staff members here in the Phoenix office are here to help and support you and your student with anything during the pre-departure process. So a little bit about traveling to and around your program location. This is a topic that we're working on with your students right now. To verify if they need a visa, if you haven't done so already, please have your student connect with their site specialist. Visa processing can take up to 30 days, so it is important to begin as soon as possible. However, every student must have a valid passport. Please work with your student to ensure that their passport is valid for at least 90 days after their program ends. Also, their passport needs to be in good condition, no rips or tears, and be signed on the data page, as you can see in the example on the screen. If your student is planning on traveling to any additional countries outside of their host country, or traveling before or after their CEA program, their visa requirements may change. It is important to understand that these specific entry requirements and what they will need to enter other countries. Additionally, if your student is not a U.S. or Canadian citizen, they will need to verify with their passport issuing country any additional entry requirements necessary to study abroad in their chosen location.
I want to remind all of you it is the student's responsibility to obtain any required visa and to have a valid passport. CEA cannot permit a student to participate in a study program without the proper documentation. Please consult with the consulate that your student is working with about acquiring the visa in a timely fashion. CEA cannot intervene with foreign consulates and is not responsible for any immigration issues encountered if a student's visa or passport are not in proper order or condition. We encourage you also to check with the airlines that your student will be flying to make sure any boarding requirements haven't changed, as we are seeing some additional inspections for students going abroad.
Cell phones. This is one of the most common questions we receive regarding a student study abroad program. CEA requires that all students obtain a working cell phone with either international or local service and provide that number to the on-site staff within 5 days of their program start date. This is to ensure that our staff can reach your student in the event of an emergency. Your student site specialist can help provide any additional guidance on cell phones in the pre-departure phase, and our on-site staff can help your students and answer questions once they are on-site if they need assistance. Please remind your students to give their phone number to the on-site staff within 5 days after their program starts. A great place to do this is by updating their personal profile on their MyCEA account. On-site staff will also collect this information during orientation the first few days of the program. It is important to remember that while Wi-Fi is available internationally, students should not rely on Wi-Fi alone to communicate with on-site staff. So your students have 3 options for cell phones while abroad. Option 1, use your current cell phone with a foreign SIM card. Some phone models can accept foreign SIM cards. Ask your service provider if your student's phone is capable of being used internationally. If it is, request they unlock it for you. You must complete this step before your students travel. Your student then can purchase an inexpensive SIM card when they arrive on site. With foreign SIM cards, they purchase credit and must add credit when they run out. This is a good way to keep track of their budget and usually a cheaper way to communicate. Many foreign SIM cards cannot support internet, apps, etc. on smartphones. They're primarily for local calls and texts. Option 2, obtain a pay-as-you-go phone upon arriving to their study abroad location. Pay-as-you-go phones are widely used internationally and can be purchased inexpensively in many stores. Similar to option 1, they'll purchase credit and must add credit when they run out. Many students choose this option and bring their U.S. phone with them, keeping it in airplane mode and use it to access the internet in Wi-Fi areas. Option 3 is to use their regular phone with an international plan. This is convenient and get expensive. Therefore, we encourage you to research different options with your provider before making a final decision. If you take a smartphone or tablet abroad, the following apps are ideal for international communication: Viber, WhatsApp, Skype, or FaceTime.
Those are all great information, Christine, and I want to remind everyone again about the communication expectation that all students have a working cell phone where CEA staff can reach them in the event of an emergency. Many times our students are flexible, wanting to live with Wi-Fi access only, and we do need a calling plan that works at all times in Wi-Fi areas and outside of Wi-Fi areas. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about packing tips and what to bring, how to carry on. To make travel as simple as possible, CEA suggests 1 carry-on, 1 large suitcase, and 1 backpack. This allows for versatility later when the student may travel independently. And it's also more manageable when there are not elevators to help with baggage at their housing assignments. Check with your airline for any international restrictions, specifically to comply with weight restrictions. Heavy bags can become expensive bags. When preparing to leave, they should be sure to bring their CEA arrival card, which will be their CEA account, their passport, and their airline ticket to the airport. People do sometimes forget their airline ticket. Make sure they also have copies of these items with them and leave copies of them with you. These items should not be packed but easily accessible in a carry-on bag. While it may seem unnecessary to have an extra t-shirt or a change of underclothes, these are important should their luggage be misrouted by the airlines. Some travel-sized toiletries are also helpful if their checked bag is deleted in some way. Students should fully expect to have their electronics screened, so should have them fully charged. Carrying them on in a way that will make them easy to access will cut any delays they experienced in security. Do not pack medication of any kind in the checked baggage. Any medication, ibuprofen through prescription medication, should be packed in a carry-on bag in the original bottle. If it is a prescription medication, the student's name should be clearly visible on the label so it can be cross-referenced with their passport. And it's good to have a note from the doctor as to what the medication is, the formulation, not the brand name, and why it is taken. This will also make security simpler for the student.
Thanks for those awesome tips, Liz. In addition to that, we encourage you to research the climate of your student city and consider the season they will be there. The best advice we have for packing is layers. Your students should plan several outfits with the same clothes. Keep in mind, if they will be visiting religious institutions, that they have dress codes, no bare shoulders or shorts, for example. Also, we encourage your students to bring comfortable walking shoes, not flip-flops. They will likely have to walk a distance commuting to and from school, as well as exploring many new places around their host city, so good walking shoes will be very useful. Please be mindful that sites have specific bag allowances as well. Our student transportation may not have room for one student's 5 bags, another student's 5 bags, so on and so forth. They may be required to obtain their own transportation at their own cost if students do not adhere to their allowances.
And lastly, I would strongly encourage you to have personal property insurance for your students' belongings. CEA does not provide personal property insurance for cell phones, computers, expensive cameras, and they should leave any expensive jewelry, watches, or anything that is irreplaceable at home. This is important, and if you have any further questions about that insurance, we can help you.
All right, so talking a little bit about life on location and specifically their arrival day. First, your student needs to arrive on the program start date, which can be found on the CEA website, on their MyCEA account, or by calling their site specialist. Please note, this is not the day that they will start classes, just the day they need to arrive in their city. CEA staff will greet all students who arrive on the program start date and provide transportation to those living in CEA housing. If your student's baggage has been misplaced by the airline, our staff will help them fill out a lost luggage claim before they leave the airport. Please remember, we cannot control how quickly the luggage is delivered, but we'll do everything we can to help the student receive it as soon as possible. If your student's flight is delayed, all they need to do is look at the arrival card, which can be printed from their MyCEA account, which will be uploaded about a week prior to departure. Contact information for the on-site staff is on the card, and your student needs to contact them to let them know. The staff will work with the student to determine next steps. At this point, your student's on-site staff is now their best resource and new point of contact. It will be their first instinct to reach out to their site specialist or to you if something goes wrong or if they have a question, but their on-site staff is best equipped to deal with any situation they face. They are in the same city, the same time zone, and are very experienced.
That's very true, Christine. It's important that you also have a plan with your student so when they first arrive, you will know they've arrived, and also for communication during the first few days. Please understand that due to jet lag, the busy orientation schedule, and those first few days in their new host country, calls may not come as frequently as you expect, and you may get a few calls from your student in the late night or very early morning as they settle into their new routine. If you are used to speaking to your student every day or several times a day, be prepared for some gaps in communication and possibly overall less frequent communication. Do let your student know you will worry less about them when you have regular touch points, and encourage them to set up a regular communication schedule with you so you can still feel connected to your student, whether that's by calls, Skypes, or Facebook posts. Expect as they adapt to their new study abroad life that you may also receive some emotional calls. This new experience may be uncomfortable for them at times. Housing will feel different, the environment will feel different, the language around them will feel different. Regular calls will help create a balance for them and for you, so the calls are not only when something is not as expected, but when things are going very well. Christine?
All right, moving on to some expectations for whenever your student arrives on site. Commuting is very common in all of our locations. Depending on the location, students can travel between 10 to 40 minutes. This is all part of the experience of living in a new country. If there is public transportation in your student city, it is very manageable, and our staff ensure that students are confident in using whatever means of transportation is available.
That's important to talk about that, because that walking, Americans do not walk very much or very often, and usually only for exercise, whereas walking is a typical way of life when studying abroad and for most folks in other places. Whether in a homestay or an apartment, also, those living spaces may be older, up to 100 years old in some historic cities, And while the windows and ceilings may be taller and larger, other features such as closets and dressers will be smaller. There may only be a freestanding wardrobe for clothes storage. This is another good reason not to overpack. The internet may not be as fast or as consistent as they have experienced at home, especially if several students in an apartment are downloading or streaming content all at the same time. Clothes washers may likely be in a different location, sometimes the kitchen or the bathroom or even on a balcony, and clothes dryers will not be common. Students can expect to hang their clothes to dry on clothing racks or clotheslines. And I share this information with you so that you can help your student adapt to this new living experience. There are laundromats available that can be found locally and laundry services, but these can be more expensive.
On to mailing. So before mailing or shipping care packages to your student, please confirm addresses with them as they do have shipping instructions to your student's location. It is also important to note that packages can easily get stuck in customs if the receiving country has questions about its contents, and customs fees can be expensive. Another very important thing to mention, you cannot mail medicine of any kind. All medicine that your student needs during their program should be carried on the plane with them when they depart.
Thank you so much for your time today. We hope this information has been helpful. Here are a couple takeaways from today's presentation. Use the resources available to help set proper expectations. Develop an arrival communication plan. Discuss and agree to a budget. Review your student's location and academic program. Enjoy this experience, and if possible, visit your student abroad. Trust us, it's a lot of fun. Please join us for CEA 102, your Students' Health and Safety Abroad, Thursday, November 9th at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now we would ask that you type any questions into the chat box. We will do our best to answer most questions. However, location or city-specific questions should be directed to your student site specialist.
For keeping, as you have joining or leaving our webinar, a feature that we have control over as it's part of the platform. And this will be recorded and sent out with deck for your review if you had difficulty with your audio or bandwidth in following the presentation.
Additionally, all questions will be answered. We're going to do our best to answer some in kind of the last 2 minutes that we have here right now, but we will be answering all questions that were chatted in and will be sent out with the recording. So I think we have our first in here. Julia, if you go ahead and read that one out for the group.
How many students use CEA housing versus finding their own housing?
That's a really great question, and it really varies from location to location. So some common locations where independent housing open over CEA housing would be Barcelona, Prague, but some of our small locations such as Paris, Costa Rica, things like that do not use independent housing as frequently as some of our other locations, but it really varies from site to site.
I would think it also depends, as you mentioned, Christine, on the size of the city and the real estate market.
Absolutely.
There's also laws that will regulate short-term rentals and Airbnb availability. Also, many students prefer to have the housing arranged through CEA so they don't have to think about the lease or negotiating with a landlord. And they also often prefer homestays, so they have an additional cultural advantage by immersed with that local family.
One other thing to note with independent housing is that if your student does decide to go that route, that essentially removes CEA from the housing equation. Therefore, they will not be able to receive any sort of assistance if they have trouble with their housing, like they're having trouble with their landlord, maintenance issues, any type of situation that comes up, CEA won't be able to intervene on their behalf, whereas if they were living in CEA housing, we would be able to help them. In addition, if they are living in independent housing, they're not eligible for airport pickup, so they will have to arrange their own transportation from the airport to their housing.
And Christine, correct me if I'm wrong, but students move into their housing on that program's start date. no earlier than that. Exactly. So that's why it's important they arrive on that specific day.
Exactly right, yes. And so if your student is planning to arrive early, that is totally fine. Just note we will not be able to pick them up from the airport, and they will need to find their accommodations for the time that they're there outside of their program date.
All right. Well, I believe our webinar was only scheduled for half an hour, so we should only be able to take one more question. I know you have a lot of questions. We see them coming in, but again, they will all be answered when we send out the recording. So Julia's going to read one more question out for us. We'll answer that, and then we will go ahead and conclude our webinar.
We had a lot of questions about the Barcelona political climate right now, so that is something I believe we should just touch on to get you all settled.
Sure. I take those questions. A few of you on the Facebook family group have also we are developing a communication for parents of students in pre-departure who are going to Barcelona, and I'll share with you that content for all parents who may have that concern. Our students on site now, university partners and parents of students on site now, have been kept informed regularly by CEA. We do send out targeted communications for families in the United States, to our university partners, and to our students on site as we have been made aware of developments. I would like to say this has been an extremely peaceful political situation. You would have to do some research to understand the context of Catalonia and the independence that they've always felt strongly about, and within their statehood, which is very different than the statehood that we have in the United States. And that's why it's approached much more like a political process. So this process and the political situation has not negatively impacted our students or staff beyond adjusting class times so that larger demonstrations don't create a bottleneck for commuting for students and staff. We've had no students depart based on the situation, and we do not anticipate any changes in our program going forward for the spring term. Again, I'd encourage you to follow up with me one-on-one. My email and phone number will be made available in the webinar resources, and I'd be happy to talk with any of you about those concerns.
Also, feel free to reach out to your student site specialist. Again, like we've emphasized throughout the webinar, we're definitely happy to answer any questions you have about the situation in Barcelona, and we've been in constant communication with our on-site staff there as well.
Well, unfortunately, that was, we only had time for those two questions. Like I said, we know there were a lot more, and we're going to answer all of them in the webinar notes. Thank you all for your time and attention. We'd like to apologize once again for all the beeping. It is just a function of the platform. But thank you all once again, and we look forward to seeing you at CEA 201 a little bit later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.